This one's techie, guys and girls of the F1 community. Indulge me a second in my tin hat conspiracy theory. Listen, chat, this is very, very techie. Oldest truism in F1 history is this: if you want the truth, just follow the money. Don't believe me? Well, look at these most recent examples. Sporting fairness will always take a backseat to the main character that is monetization. Think about party mode, Mercedes. Well, what does that even matter, Cameron? That was 2,000 years ago, as near as makes no difference. Well, you don't have a sport if you don't have stakes. In 2021, of course, it was Max Verstappen and Sir Lewis Hamilton. Then Sir Lewis Hamilton was the villain of the piece. Monopoly, settings. F1 had become boring. Some say four-time champion was Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson, Hamilton. Then people were turning off. Mercedes were going to win because they always win. And then from the embers comes a young, hungry new champion. He had a name, and his name was Maximilian Verstappen. FIA, by all accounts, wanted Max, a new champion, to take over the reign of Mercedes and Sir Lewis Hamilton. Why? Because cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money, dollar bills. Your people will watch if there are stakes and circumstances. Put simply and more precisely, if you don't know who's going to win. If Lewis Hamilton had won himself a fifth championship back to back, then of course you always know who's going to win, because it is going to be Mercedes. It is from that story that comes the restriction, no suffocation technically, of Mercedes, party mode, and there were others. Don't believe me? As Exhibit A, please see Ferrari fuel flow gate. What happened to that? Just went away, right? Poof. Just like Kaiser Soze in The Usual Suspects. The F1, of course it's a sport, but it's always going to be sports entertainment. And I say all of this to say this. Going into 2025, I feel like F1 have themselves a favourite. History in F1 doesn't always repeat, but it does rhyme. Back in 2021, Sir Lewis was the four-time champion. Now it's Maximilian Verstappen. Back then, the young, hungry lion, the upstart, the pretender, the heir to Sir Lewis's crown was Max Verstappen. Now he has a different name. His name is Lando Norris. Now I say all that to preface the thesis that I'm about to put forth. Look, Pier Giuseppe Donadoni, God-tier journalist, has written a brilliant article. Remember, we talked about FlexiWing being the battleground upon which the 2025 season will be fought, won or lost. In 2024, McLaren were nowhere. They started off as a back marker, for Pete's sake, and then Rob Marshall, the last wing bender, built themselves a FlexiWing that leveraged aero elasticity to take them from mid-pack to ostensibly the best car on the grid. That has to mean something. Ferrari did a similar thing, and some would say that at the end of 2024, the red car was the quickest one. Red Bull, though, couldn't do it until 2025. Therefore, you are expecting Red Bull to go away and do some due diligence, build in that aero elasticity into their front wing, and return themselves to the front of the pack. Well, not quite. Because again, you'll know that the FIA announced TD18, a technical directive, meaning that they're doctoring even the margin of error as far as how flexible those front flexi wings can be. 3mm at the front, now 2mm. 15mm was the tolerance before, now 13. But the timing of that announcement is key. We've talked about this before now, but in Pier Giuseppe Donadoni's article, he claims that the timing of this is a bit techier than techie things, that it's indicative of something more insidious. Look, lest we forget that Mohammed bin Salman, once upon a time, to be precise in 2022, Saudi Arabia, by dint of Aramco on the wing, title sponsor of Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin, tried to reinstate Fernando Alonso on the podium. Why soever would Mohammed bin Salman do that? Why would he do that? Aramco, petro giants, Middle Eastern, why would he do that? How would they be incentivized? I mean, I can't possibly think of a reason. Now, again, here's where we get techie. Now, do you know who owns McLaren? I did not know this. In 2004, a sovereign wealth fund of Bahrain acquired all of the outstanding shares of McLaren Group. They took 100% ownership of McLaren Automotive to Abu Dhabi-based investment firm CYVN. It's got to mean something, eh? There are stakes. There is power plays in all of this. This fund, who have bought all the bloody shares for McLaren Group, who ultimately own McLaren F1, will want to see their team do well, a return on their investment. Now let's talk about this McLaren wing stuff, because Pierre Giuseppe's outlined it more succinctly than I ever could. Look, if you're going to ban flexi wings, ban them last year now. If the sporting playfield is level and you're looking to institute the rules in a way that's fair and consistent across all related parties, that's the remit, lest we forget, of the FIA, the regulatory body of Formula One. Then as soon as you see the Italian Grand Prix, the onboard of Lando Norris's pole lap, the flexi wing at the front doing one of these, practically lifting up in a way that's perpendicular to its foundational plane, ban it then. Tom Biasis then of the FIA said, you know what, it passed the load test, so it's Gucci. Nothing to see here, business as usual. What? This makes no sense. This is favouritism in this honestly, you beggars belief. It's doing one of these. FIA, ban it then. This isn't calculus or Fermat's last theorem. This is simple as counting. My son is 4. He can do that, but they didn't do it. They said, tick, it passes the load test, it's good to go. How many points, chat, did McLaren accrue by dint of that flexi wing? How many? And the bloody mini DRS that Oscar Jack Piastri leveraged 25 points in Baku. How many points total? Could they have won the Constructors' Championship but for the durable competitive advantage that they leveraged by dint of the aero-elasticity of that front wing? I would argue not. Now, the second leg of this tinfoil hat conspiracy theory is as follows. TD18 dictates that the flex is being tinkered with. That's going to come in as at Spain, race 9 in 2025. Why then? Christian Horner asked the question, if you're going to ban it, just ban it now, surely. Am I missing something? But Pier Giuseppe Donadoni argued as long as a month ago that McLaren, in league with the FIA, knew and understood that this rule amendment was coming, that this technical directive 1.8 was in the pipeline, and have been since building a car to meet that new regulation, that technical directive. Their flexi wing is already done for race 9. Red Bull, meantime, are fuming because they've been investing, doing their due diligence in a flexi wing that ticks all the regulations as they were. F1 is a no preparation race. That sunk cost, they will never ever get back, especially if they didn't know about TD18. Pier Giuseppe Donadoni of autorace.it argues that McLaren, in league with the FIA, if speculation and hyperbole and conjecture is something you can be invested in. Pier Giuseppe Donadoni argues that McLaren knew all the while, so they already have the jump on the other 9 teams. They've already built their flexi wing for race 9. Red Bull have only done for the rules as they were in 2024. They will feel bad, right? Aggrieved, a woman scorned because they lost the Constructors' Championship because the FIA refused to adopt their load testing then, but they are doing it now. Listen, I say all this to say this. F1's always been a piranha's tank. It's not what you know, it's who you know and how you treat them. Don't believe me? Exhibit A. You'll remember Spygate. Ron Dennis fell foul of the wrath of Max Mosley then because one of his bodge, Nigel Stepney, had gotten hold of some intellectual property, Ferrari then. For that, Max Mosley said he had to pay a £5 million fine. Another 95 million, Max Mosley said at the time, for being an absolute douchebag and mismanaging the whole situation and his relationship with then FIA head Max Mosley. Only a couple years later, Fabio Briatore did the same thing. However, what he didn't do is mismanage his relationship with Max Mosley then. I say all that to say this. The FI, the head of the FI, is an important figure in all this. Zak Brown, by dint of the owners of McLaren, now Mumtakalat Holding Company. Sorry, then Mumtakalat, I'm reading it wrong. Look at this. CYV Holding, sorry, Abu Dhabi based. By dint of those relationships, the key stakeholders, Zak Brown is finessing these other teams. They don't know where they are or who they are. McLaren have the whip hand going into 2025 by dint of this information. Come race 9, they already have their flexi wing ready to go to meet the new technical directive 1.8. 2mm now was 3mm on the outside of the plane. 15mm was 13mm now on the inside of the front wing. Everybody else now, as we talk about this, is scrambling around to make sure they have a front wing leveraging the aero elasticity, but that meets the new TD18. McLaren don't have to do that. They're good to go. They have it already. And time is all important. Not lap time, preparation time. Zak Brown and McLaren, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury, have the whip hand. Flexi wing ready to go for 2025, both in Australia and as at race 9 when TD18 is set to kick in. They have a head start, therefore, in the preparation race that is F1. All bets are off. Lando Norris and McLaren have the whip hand. They are holding the red pen in real time, and they are rightfully, quite rightfully, the odds makers' favourites. 3-1 Lando Norris, and constructors' favourites are McLaren. Mate, how, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury, do you like yourselves some F1?